this is the 8th or so version of that group. This time it's with Flair, Anderson, Benoit, and Mongo. And man, there's no denying the success of the Four Horsemen up to this point. But at this stage, did you think it had run its course, or did you feel like there was still a little meat left on the bone if they were properly booked?
Well, if they were properly booked, I think there was still a little meat on the bone because, the two of the strongest obvious characters in that foursome could carry it.
Yes,
that's it. Flair and
Arn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Steve McMichael was green and coming straight off the gridiron here into pro wrestling, but I mean he was charismatic as hell, entertaining to watch on screen, and man, Chris Benoit was a hell of a worker. A lot of people, Ted, have a difficult time going back and watching Chris Benoit wrestle now, given the circumstances. I personally will still watch a match of his because I can separate the man, the art from the artist, so to speak. But I mean, Chris, not a name that we're going to discuss here very much on the show. So I guess now is about as good a time as any. Ted, his story is probably the most infamous in wrestling history, but I'm wondering about your thoughts when it comes to Chris Benoit.
Everybody who knew Chris liked him.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Benoit was not a guy who had a whole lot of enemies, and all I can say is that I don't know what caused him to go off his rocker like that, but everybody would tell you the Chris Benoit that I knew and that everybody else knew was not capable of doing that.
Yep.
I mean, to kill your whole family and then kill yourself.
Oh.
It was probably, to me, that's the biggest shock that ever in my entire career. That was the most shocking thing that I've ever seen. And like everybody else, everybody was like, not Chris. Are you kidding? Nobody thought, it's like there are some guys that, you could see some guys that were natural hotheads or whatever, and there were a lot of maybe other guys, in the wrestling business. So, well, they might not be surprised, but everybody was surprised. Everybody was, surprised to like non-belief. No, it couldn't possibly. Chris Benoit could not possibly have done that. Yeah, yet he did.
And there were some folks in the business that I know had committed murder, had committed crimes, had been really kind of awful people outside of the ring. So, I mean, for a guy who had the success that Chris Benoit had, he had made tons and tons of money in wrestling. For a guy who had formed a family and a loving family, a man of God as well, by his own admission. I don't think anybody could have predicted what happened there with him. My goodness, what a tragedy.
No, I just, only God knows.